Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Life Matters TV, episode number 56. And today I'm coming to you from Belmont, California. David McLeod, your life mastery coach, creator and host of the Daily Affirmation program. I just love doing this kind of stuff with people and sharing what I have learned through my life and hopefully helping other people to learn as well. And I'm glad to know that there are people out there like you who are listening to this and who are paying attention to it and maybe offering us some suggestions about how we can make it even better. So that's why I'm here. And I know my buddy Tommy is here. So my co-host, my fellow enlightenee, we're all kind of moving towards that path of enlightenment. Welcome, Tommy. Good morning.
Hey, David. Thanks. Welcome. And good day, everybody. Yeah. What are we doing here? The Soul Talk guys, talking about soul matters, things that matter to you, deep down inside, right? That shift the way we see the world, that change our perspective a little bit, that help us kind of re-engage life in a different way that's lighter and more fun and more free. That's kind of the bottom line here. Today, we're talking about something that's near and dear to our hearts, literally, figuratively, and everything else. And the topic today is called tainted love. So yeah, we're tackling love today. And boy, it's a sticky one, right? We all think we know what love is, or we've had it, or we haven't had it, we've lost it, we've fallen into it. Sometimes like a pile of, yeah. So today we're talking about tainted love. What the heck's tainted love? And somebody said to me once, it's kind of the difference between a real rose and a fake rose is this concept of love. And so let's just launch into it, David. I don't know where that's going to take us, but let's just dive into the pool.
Okay. Yeah, I really like this topic. It's a little bit controversial. And I guess that's kind of the way we are. We like to tweak people a little bit, get them wondering, what the hell are these guys up to now? And I don't know about you, but one of the things that I've learned in my life is this concept of love has often been presented to me in a conditional way, where I'll give you this if you give me that. It's more like a barter system, you know. It's kind of we don't give our love freely and without any conditions, and that's because I think because our minds get involved, our ego minds get into the story and think that, oh my God, if I tell this person I love her or him, then they're going to expect me to show up a certain way or something like that. You know, we create our own conditions around this stuff, and it really, I think, ruins the experience of love. Love by its very nature is by definition unconditional. And yet we put all kinds of weird stuff around the outside of it, and we call that love. Well, I think that's what we're talking about here, is how we kind of poison it almost and taint it and prevent it from being the stuff that it's supposed to be. So I guess that's what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it's pervasive. It's all around us. You hear it in the music, you see it on TV, you see it in movies, all these concepts of pure love and true love and all this stuff, falling in love and all this stuff is actually, and you watch it and you listen to it and my heart gets broken and you're dragging me through the mud and, you know, the chains of the bonds of matrimony and all this stuff. I'm like, so let's talk a little bit about, David, about what is just what we're talking about, this concept of pure love and this, you know, unadulterated love, just as giving. And to me, you know, we used to use a term back in the day of no strings attached. And that was kind of a term to mean like you could date with somebody and have, you know, your way with them, but we're not getting involved. We're not getting, you know, too tied up in this. But really, for me, that's become my way of loving, is really no strings attached. And to me, as I refer to that as a string is an attachment. A string is a hook. A string is a cable. A string is a commitment. It's I said the word commitment. It's an expectation. It's condition. So all these words are, to me, strings or cables or hooks or attachments. And you can feel that already. Just a relationship gets really heavy and burdened down pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that, you know, there's a lot of really good stuff in the 2 or 3 sentences that you've shared there, and you know, something that I think we do need to talk about. we've had a couple of episodes in the past. One was actually No Strings Attached. I think we did that one. And we also did another one prior to that called, what was it? Liberate Your Love. And so, you know, this is a theme that has been pervading a lot of our topics. And what I believe is love really is something that is absolutely free. It is unchained. It is liberated. It is independent. It has no expectations. It has no, the idea of commitment, I want to put that onto the side. The idea of expectation, I can feel some clinginess in that word, but commitment is something different. I can make a commitment without necessarily having any attachment to it. But the attachment piece is where things get sticky. And I think what happens is attachment and expectation both can really put weird energy into this concept of love. And both of those things, as we've talked about before, come strictly from the mind. They don't come from the heart. Attachment and connection, attachment and expectation don't come from the heart. They come from the head. And that's where I think the difference is. What we're trying to do is we're trying to live our lives from a place of heart and from spirit, but unfortunately our head wants us to navigate through this world, and so it gives us all kinds of different stories, and that's where the challenge comes into play. So that's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling it right. You're saying it. It feels right. Yeah, the love that we're talking about is the unconnected, from the heart love, and right, it's the mind. And when you were talking about expectation and we're talking about hooks, I had this Velcro just pop into my head. Velcro. I don't know, but it seems like, you know, anything it gets sticky, and so let's talk about that. You know, that's to me is what we're talking about. Tainted love is the sticky love. It's the conditional stuff. So what do we do, David? You know, how does that show up in our life for real? And what can we do to start unsticking the Velcro and standing on our own? Anything pop in there?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, I mean, how many times have I heard from somebody with whom I've been in relationship, if you really loved me, you would, followed by something underneath, you know, as if, first off, as if I can read his or her mind and know what he or she wants. And secondly, then to be able to fulfill all their wants and needs, which is completely ludicrous. There's no way one person in this planet can fulfill all the needs of another. It's just, I mean, we are too big, too magnificent to ever have that happen. Furthermore, do we really have any needs in the first place? You know, that's another question that really comes up. So if you loved me, you would. In other words, I put a condition on love right off the bat by expecting something from somebody. That's one thing that comes up for me. Have you had that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And the word needs is the word in there that resonated. That again, it comes back to needs and expectations. So let's talk a little bit about that, because what we can't do in a relationship is tell somebody to stop being needy or stop being clingy, or we can't tell somebody else to shift the way they're in a relationship. Right. So let's just get that clear. We have to take responsibility like we do at Soul Talk, guys, right. and for ourselves. And so we need to look at our own need and our own kind of tendency to cling or to need. So what are we needing? Why do we set hooks? Why do we set expectations? What do we do? And where does that kind of come from? And you know, we talked about lists, right? We have lists of expectations of, oh, my partner or my friend or my mom or my dad are going to have these, this stuff in their list. Those are kind of needs, right?
Yeah.
Maybe undocumented needs, but they're in us, in our head, like you said, quite right. What can we do about needs?
Well, that's a great thing you pointed out. I mean, talking about a list. Before I got married for the second time, that was back in 1997, I had a list for what I wanted in a mate. And I'm telling you, it was a long list. And it was amazing to me when I actually met this woman, how many of those things I could actually check off. It was pretty amazing to me. And yet, when I look back on that list later, I realized how well, I don't want to put a judgment on it, but I was limiting myself in a lot of ways. I was limiting myself by not allowing a full person to come into my life. I was looking for a bunch of labels, and I found them. And in many ways, that relationship was quite satisfying, and I got a lot out of it. It helped me to learn a lot about myself. But in the long run, I realized this is not the way to live. I was putting restrictions on how I wanted my own love to be. And I didn't even realize it until we had been married for about 3 or 4 years, and then it just started to come into my awareness. So that took quite a long time. So
yeah, that was a powerful thing for me too. The list, and there was a time in my life when I was back in the dating world, like it sounds like you were, and I actually met people that showed me their list.
yeah,
Like gave me a piece of paper with things on it,
and asked you if you were there.
and she goes, "Look, you meet all the things on my list." And I was like, "Oh, good for you, good for your list." One of the things on there was that I liked her cat. But the thing, here's what you do when you do it: let you damn yourself to hell with the list. Because here's the problem with that list. She didn't know that I was deathly allergic to cats.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was nothing in there for me on her list. It was all about what she needed. My list. This is my list. This is what I need. And there was no consideration for the other person. And if you try to do that, then oh my gosh, then your list gets, you need a supercomputer.
Yeah, that's right.
Your list in. Yeah. and then what happens, David? Every time you hear a song or you watch a movie, you're like, oh, I like the ending of that movie. They seem really happy. I'm going to scratch this thing off my list, and I'm going to add in what I just saw in this movie.
Yeah, right.
And your list is always changing too.
That's right. Yeah. That's been a great learning experience. Now, I want to be careful here, because I actually think, and this is something that we tell people, is to write things down. So let's not damn the list. Let's just notice whether we make a list or not, and then decide whether the list makes sense. I think that's really what I want people to get from this. What I've noticed for myself, having gone through that experience now one time anyway, and probably I've done it unconsciously before that, now my list is very small. My list is just, I want a relationship with somebody who can be fully present for me, who can allow me to be fully present in the relationship. I want a relationship where the two of us are kind of in spiritual partnership, supporting each other to move on our paths, whatever they are. They don't have to be the same path. But I just want to be able to be in relationship with someone who's willing to support me and who's willing to receive my support. That's the kind of thing that's important to me. I noticed that this time around, I had no idea about, how tall this woman was going to be, what body shape she was going to have, or any of that other stuff. I mean, I just know what I'm attracted to, and you know what you're attracted to. And so I just invite in whoever happens to show up, and then kind of feel it with my heart. Is this going to be a good relationship for me or not? Rather than trying to check off items on a list. It's kind of a different approach now.
Yeah, it definitely is. And attracted to, who I'm attracted to, that is not what my brain thinks I'm attracted to, because that's the list. But what my heart, what my energy system, what my heart and my emotions attracts to, or attracts. So so that's, again, the distinction of dropping it out of your head and kind of getting into how you feel and trusting how you feel again. So the list, what are we going to do? I want to get to, so sometimes, people are hearing this kind of discussion, right, that we have, and they're like, but I'm in a relationship, and I've been in a relationship for 15 years, and I can't walk out of that relationship. What can I do? Mm-hmm. It's sticky. There's a lot of hooks. There's a lot of, stuff that's happened over 15 years, 5 years, 5 months. What do I do?
That's a good question. And, I've walked away from a couple of relationships now that were no longer serving me. And it's a difficult thing to do, absolutely. I'm not recommending that that's necessarily what people have to do. But I think for me, I have to be true to my heart. I have to be true to my soul. And if I'm listening to my ego mind and let my ego mind drive the bus, I'm not being true to my heart and my soul. So I really have to get underneath that and ask myself the question, is this relationship really, truly serving me? Is it allowing me to show up fully and magnificently as a human being? Or is it in some way shutting me down? maybe there's value in being shut down. Maybe I'm supposed to learn some lesson there, and I can't figure it out by looking at my head. I can only figure it out by looking at my heart and my soul and asking the question, is this the right relationship for me? And if it is, great, stick it out and learn and grow and do what you can with it. And if it isn't, then you have to make a decision. You have to make a decision to either, change the relationship in some way so that it does become the relationship you want. Or if that is not going to happen, if there's no way for that to happen, then you have to make the choice to move on. Otherwise, you're stifling yourself. You're preventing yourself from being the fully magnificent being that you were intended to be.
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing here when you're in a relationship, because you've helped create all these hooks. You've helped create all the conditions. You've helped create all this stuff that maybe doesn't feel right, or maybe isn't serving you, or maybe isn't supporting you. You're 50% of that game. So it's, absolutely. I have to coach people and explain to people, you've got to clear yourself first. You've got to, get yourself clear. And this means, yeah, David, when I say lists, right, we write lists. So if you have an imaginary list of what your partner right now is supposed to be like, or your mom or your dad or your son or your daughter, whatever it is, write it down and look at it and see if these are really things that you have to have, or if this is just making your life miserable, or setting all these hooks and making it all Velcro. And you have to go do that work first yourself. And don't walk away from a relationship thinking, oh yeah, I'm enlightened now and I don't need this. And because if you do that, honestly, if you do that, you're going to walk right back into another relationship, and it's going to be as sticky and as mucky and as crapped out as the last one was, because you're still bringing the same patterns in. No matter where you go, there you are, as long as you're dealing with your head. So you've got to clear yourself first. Take responsibility. You got to unhook your side of the hooks as best you can, and that's this whole list thing. It sounds silly, but it's a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. Self-responsibility, that's another one of our key teachings, and we're constantly harping on that. I cannot hold somebody else responsible for my part in a relationship, ever. Sure, it might be easy for my ego mind to put blame on that person. And in fact, it really is. It's easy for me to say, oh, that guy's an asshole. But that is not necessarily true. If I see the asshole in that person, what I'm really should be looking at is the asshole in me. How am I showing up that way? How am I preventing myself from being fully present? How am I creating this space in my own life? And so, you're right on, Tommy. We've got to do our own inner work. And once I'm clear on my own inner work, then, I should say, I don't have to be fully clear in order to engage my partner and ask him or her to do his or her work at the same time. Maybe together we can do this work. But ultimately, I'm responsible for me. And I'm ultimately responsible for my own part of this relationship. So I can't hold my partner responsible.
Yeah. So let's play this out a little bit, because I've been through this, you've been through this. And look, as I've cleared my list, I haven't abandoned all my relationships. I still have relationships with people I've had for all my life and at different points in my life. But I've just cleared my side of a relationship by, again, removing my expectations, removing my, my list of conditions. And as you do that too, the relationship is just naturally going to ease, because guess what you're not doing anymore? You're not holding the other person accountable for behaving a certain way. You're not judging that person anymore. So we can get into this whole judgment game, right? That just mucks up a relationship in a big way. You can just feel the heaviness and the mud in judging. And as you let go of these lists, let go of these expectations, let go of these conditions, little by little or lot by lot, however you can manage it and do it, that relationship is going to ease up. And you're going to start to see something in a person. You don't even have to ask them to do anything. You don't have to ask them to do their own work. Let's just put that aside, because some people don't have that luxury. Some people's partners are never going to, aren't going to walk up to this and watch the Soul Talk guys. So you have to take it all on yourself, and it's not as hard as you think. But it's a matter of you letting go of things.
Yeah. Well, but that's an interesting point. I mean, if I do my work and I continue growing and growing, but my partner chooses not to do that work, eventually we're going to grow apart. And then I have to make a choice about whether I want to stay in that relationship or not. Is it still serving me? We ultimately have to keep asking that question. I mean, I like Neil Donald Walsh said once that the quality of a relationship isn't measured by how long it lasts. You know, you can't say that just because you're married for 50 years that it was a good relationship. It may have been hell for one or both parties. And they did it because they thought society insisted that they have this long-term relationship. I'd rather have people speak honestly and truthfully about what's going on for themselves and make decisions from that place than trying to please somebody outside of themselves in order to look good or get approval or any of that stuff that we've talked about before. So honesty is the first piece. You know, I have to own my part, I have to be honest, and I have to take accountability for how I'm showing up. And I think that's true for both parts of the relationship. If one part's not willing to do it, we have a problem.
Yeah, but we have to do everything. Yeah, as responsible beings too, doing as much clearing as we can, you know, to make sure that we're clear on our side. And if that doesn't make things where, right, if there comes a point where in that relationship where you are separating because you're following a path and the other person's not, and it's just coming. I've been through that too, and I have left relationships in that situation, both, you know, very close ones and also just friendships and other, you know, different levels of relationships. Mm-hmm. You'll naturally drift apart, and with the way the legal system is, if you're actually married, then it can get ugly, and especially if you have, you know, other people involved in it. But yeah, you're right, David. But the point is, you gotta make sure you're clear. You're not just making a judgment in your head, and not just, oh, my friends are doing it, so I'll do it, and breaking off relationships without clearing your end first, and right. Letting go of your judgments, letting go of your expectations, letting go of your conditions, and then you'll be able to see more clearly what decision you need to make.
Mm-hmm. Yep, totally in agreement here. Self-responsibility, number one priority. And only from a place of self-responsibility am I able to love unconditionally. I can't, when I'm putting blame on someone else, then that's my ego talking, and love gets all kinds of conditions on it. When I'm taking responsibility and standing up for myself and being a sovereign, integrated human being, that's when I can stay connected to my unconditional love. And I can love you even though I'm choosing to separate from you. And that's very different from the kind of love that we have. If I stick around just because I think I have to or something like that, that's the tainted love that's keeping us going. So our objective here is to just get ourselves to ask the questions. What am I doing to contribute to this relationship? How am I making this relationship show up the way it is? How am I perhaps tainting the love that's in this relationship? And don't judge yourself for it. Just notice what you're doing and say, is there a way that I can change? Is there a way that I can show up differently to maybe clean up my part of it?
Yeah, that's it. Take responsibility and figure out how to clean it up. And hopefully through the different talks that we do here at LifeWorks, Life Matters, you find those things that you do need to clean up in any relationship, right? Whether it's a relationship with yourself, or relationships that are really close and tightly, you know, hooked, or even the tiers of relationships, you know, at friends at work and coworkers and all that stuff. But yeah, taking it upon ourselves and clearing. So David, we talked about lists, you know, kind of identifying, making sure you know what your expectations are. We talked a little bit about judgment. We talked about the judge before, and how that kind of puts ties and binds into things. What else?
Well, you mentioned earlier about this concept of commitment, and I said, let's just put that off on the shelf.
Let's come back to it, yeah.
Because, you know, it's possible for me to make a commitment to something and to honor that commitment for some period of time. But there is no law anywhere that I know of that says that I can't change my commitment, that I can't go to my partner and say, this commitment is no longer working for me. I need to make some changes, and here's why, and just explain it. And I want to renegotiate the commitment. This happens in relationships all the time. I mean, there are people who have, I'd say the most common form of relationship in in Western culture anyway, is what we call monogamy. However, it isn't the only form of relationship. And there are plenty of people out there who don't buy into the whole monogamy is a natural state of being kind of thing. So they may have different kinds of arrangements and agreements and commitments than people in a monogamous relationship might have. And so what happens, for example, if one person is feeling like he or she wants to have some needs met outside of the relationship? How do you negotiate that? How do you get clarity between the two of you about what's really being sought and what's going on between the two of you without one person getting badly hurt in the process? These are questions that I think we really have to ask. And if I'm not going to be honest, if I'm not going to take full responsibility for myself, that's when the real pain comes. Yes, some pain can come too when I'm being honest, but at least it's honest pain. It's not this sideways stuff that's coming in and stabbing people in the back. So commitment is something that can change at any time, and we have to be willing to step up and speak our truth about that, just like we speak our truth about every other aspect of our relationship.
What popped in there as we were talking about commitment and changing commitments. A big T word that we haven't touched upon yet is trust.
Woo!
Right? Having that trust, that open trust between people. And again, you know, things that ruin trust are judgments, conditions, expectations, and the subsequent behaviors. So commitment and trusting the other person, again, that's something that, you know, I don't know if we had Beata on and we talked a little bit about trust, but that may be something we need to dive into a little deeper in future stuff, because that's a tough one, right? Especially if the trust has been dissolved over the time or broken, or somebody, you know, has violated that trust in one or many ways. But this element of trust, what am I committing to? I'm committing to trust you and asking you to trust me. So again, that's a free flow exchange too. Yeah. And when our head gets worked up in it, you know, that's when we violated trust and we can't forgive, and all those things happen. So yeah, trust popped up, and that's a whole nother topic for another day too. But what do we feel about trust in open, free love?
Well, my feeling is trust and safety are related terms. And in my judgment, they're both inside jobs. I create safety for myself, and in creating safety for myself, I usually create safety for other people in my relationships. In the same way, I don't gain trust by expecting you to be trustworthy. What I do is I gain trust by trusting you. And then what happens is you generally step up to become trustworthy. It's an amazing thing. And trust, I believe, is just a variant of unconditional love. If I trust you, I'm basically saying I love you unconditionally, and I know that you're going to show up in integrity, and you're going to make mistakes because you're a human just like I am, and I trust that you're going to own them and be responsible and come to me with your truth, whatever it might be. That's how we create a fully loving relationship, and an open one on top of that. So, you know, we can have agreements and put boundaries. For example, this is how far I'm willing to allow this openness to go without any further conversation. But if you want to step just outside that boundary, I want to have a conversation before you do that. I just want to understand what's going on. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. We can create all kinds of interesting relationships and agreements and concepts and build trust around them. And when people take ownership of their mistakes, that increases trust. That's what I've experienced anyway.
Yeah, there's a lot. We're opening a can of worms that we'll I'm not gonna use that metaphor anymore. We'll open that one and talk about that in the future, because that gets really deep here. And you said trust is had to do with, what did you say, security or safety? Safety?
Well, trust and safety are related concepts.
Yeah. So what I'm feeling here too is that you really have to be people. I'm hearing heads out there going, I don't want to be vulnerable. I want to be safe. I don't want to expose myself. I want to be safe. I don't want to put myself out there because I know how much, you know, heartbreak hurts. So there's a whole aspect of that too, right?
Yep.
So there's an element of letting go and opening up and being okay with whatever happens. I think we have a fear of feeling, and we have a fear of feeling hurt. We have a fear of feeling heartbreak, and so that, you know, is a big one we need to start to release in order to get back into this open, trusting, no strings attached type of relationships.
It's interesting that you mentioned the word vulnerability. I think vulnerability actually is a real source of power. A lot of people don't see that right away because they think, oh, if I'm open and vulnerable, someone's going to hurt me. They're going to stomp on my heart or whatever. But what I found is quite the opposite. When I'm open and vulnerable, people tend to just open up and be vulnerable with me. Yeah, there are going to be some people out there who are going to take advantage, absolutely. But most people, I don't think, take advantage. Most people want that openness and vulnerability, and that is what creates connection. That is the channel for unconditional love, which is what we're trying to create here.
I think we leave it at that. You just kind of brought it back down to, yeah, being open, being vulnerable. It's okay. It's okay to trust. Even if somebody hurt you, open up and trust again. Open up and love again. Don't lock yourself up. Locking yourself up, you know, if you're blocking ourselves, blocking our love, blocking our trust, we're just blocking ourselves. We're just making our own lives miserable and constricted and confined and boxed in due to our own fears and our own beliefs and our own conditions. So So what do we do, David? Is there a 3-step process for today? Is it back to making a list of all your expectations of somebody and burning it, or are we going to give them something else today?
You know, what I would recommend is people start first by loving themselves. You know, I can only show up as a loving being in a relationship to the same extent that I'm willing to show up and love myself. And I know that that sounds like some people think that it's selfish to love themselves, but not if it's unconditional love. If it's unconditional love, then loving yourself means honoring yourself, welcoming yourself fully into the world, and then just showing up. And when you do that, it makes it so much easier to love other people and to be compassionate, forgiving, and grateful and appreciative of those people in your life. So, and that's where the tainted part disappears and the true, authentic, unconditional part just shows up and blossoms like beautiful flowers in the sunlight.
So let's take that. How do we do that? How do we love ourselves? The exercise is going to be this. During the week, as you're engaging with other people, try to actually come out of your head and drop into your heart space. Just imagine that you're kind of thinking from your heart and engaging people that way. And you'll engage yourself differently, and you'll be in relationship with other people differently. Just kind of take your brain and imagine your brain is speaking through your heart, and try that out in your relationships this week. See what happens.
Right.
David, what are we doing next week?
Well, because we are so amazing at this, next week we're going to be celebrating with a topic called "It's All Good."
It's all good. Yeah.
It's all good. That's going to be our topic next week, and we're going to have fun with that. You know, Tommy and I never take a direct line on stuff. You're going to find out. It's going to be fun. So please join us next week. And remember, go to our website, lifematterstv.com. That's life-matters-tv.com. Make some comments. Send your friends there. We want to get more and more people involved in what we're doing and help them to find out about this great stuff that we're doing here. So yeah, thank you all for being here.
I was going to say, stop hogging us. If you're getting value out of this and you're liking it, share it, send it out. And people may think, what? These guys are crazy. It doesn't matter. As David said, when you open up, people open up to you. That's a core truth. And so when you send this, like an invitation to somebody and say, hey, you know, I watch these guys on the show once in a while, you're opening up to them, and you're going to let them see a side of you that maybe you've sheltered from them before. But I guarantee people are going to open up and they're going to like, wow, this is cool. And you do this stuff too. And you're going to hear that kind of stuff start coming up. So that's it. Love everybody. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.